Good evening. This is Dale Lamb with Gardner Webb. This is Mels 603. Our usual 60 Wednesday night class. I'm sorry that I'm having to record this earlier tonight and send it to you, but I've got a previous engagement later this evening. I can't make it tonight at our normal 7 o'clock time. I didn't want to move the time and folks not be able to do that, so I'll just record it and send it to you, and you can watch it hopefully at 7 o'clock. This is week 9. The material we're going to cover tonight is staff selection, contracts, evaluation, law, HR, teachers' rights, managing human resources, assets, employee evaluation. I've got some materials. They're obviously all on our website on our Blackboard shell under week 9. So those are the things we're going to cover tonight. Quickly, let me remind you that this is week 9 for evidence artifacts as well. And this is where you should be. As it says, last week I did instructor-led review of the prompts last week for the skip and the cap. I will, I hope that you're seeing that. I will cover the cap again after you've done a couple of these, and make sure that this is being shared. All right. So I've covered, remember you do the first 2 prompts and then the first 2 tasks of the skip, and then the first task of the cap. I'll cover that one again with you. I believe I have it down for week after next to cover that again for you. Zoom master schedule, Zoom peer review session for skip task 1. So you are to Zoom peer review for skip task 1. You should be closing out your OMA. If you haven't already, you should be doing that this week and moving on to your skip. You need to go ahead. You will need to do a Zoom review of skip task 1 and also of cap task 1 when we get there in a couple of weeks. So we're week 9. We're doing well so far. I'm enjoying reading your discussion board posts and the work that you're doing. Your OMAs have been very good. Your discussion board posts, I hope that you're getting some value out of these activities that I'm having you to do for your discussion boards, interviewing people, observing the management routines around your building. I was on a school visit today, and one of the things that I noted today is, in talking with the candidate and with the principal today, is that what we hope that you're learning, or what I hope that you're learning, is how it ought to be done, not necessarily how it is done. I want you to see how it is done and compare that with the way it ought to be done. So a lot of what we do in 603 is comparison. We observe and we compare, just like in the OMA. We go out and we look at the master scheduling process. We compare, this is the process that's being used now that produces this result. Instead of trying to change the result, why not look at the process and assess the process? It's kind of the way it is all the way through here. Everything that we have you do is looking to see what you're doing now and what should you be doing now. Because when you get your job, what I hope is that you will do it the right way, not the way it's always been done. That's just a little editorial on the side. So that's where we are in week 9. You should be moving to your skip, and you will do a Zoom peer review of your skip. If you hadn't finished your OMA, get on it. All right. So let's look and see what things that I have for you tonight. Look at that. All right. I want to start out with hiring decisions. Rule number 1, it's all about people and relationships. Hiring, if you read the book Good to Great by Jim Collins, he says that it's better to hire nobody than to hire a bad employee. Well, I know in the school business, because we have supervision issues, that we don't always have that luxury not to hire anybody. I didn't find anybody I really liked. I'll just pass on this round. It doesn't work that way. Parents expect their child to have a teacher. So it's not always as easy as, oh, we'll just wait till the right person comes along. Sometimes you have to make sure that you find the best of what's available. And I have a I have a there are a lot of slides in this presentation, but again, we always start with the legal aspect in 603. Please remember that principals don't hire, superintendents don't hire. Board of Education's hire based on the recommendation of the superintendent, and superintendent makes that recommendation based on the principal's recommendation. So whether you're hiring a teacher or an assistant principal, the important thing to know is when you're in that role, when you're in that principal role, or that assistant principal role, and you're interviewing people, that you don't actually offer the jobs. You make the recommendation on up the line. That's a really bad mistake to make. Is somebody comes back and says, well, the principal offered me the job, how come I didn't get it? Well, the principal can't offer the job. And so you can review this one. It's under General Statutes 115C 276. The local board of education does all the hiring. They also do all the firing as well, on the recommendation of the superintendent. The next one we want to look to assist local board in electing school personnel. It's the duty of the superintendent to recommend the board, all principals, teachers, and other personnel in the unit. So again, these are the laws that you need to understand, and you need to make sure that you know that as you go. Just some general things: make good informed decisions, be thorough. A sub is better than a bad hire. That's true. Collins says don't get anybody. In our business, we have to get subs, and so, but you don't want to make that a habit or a long-term thing. But set and maintain high expectations. As you work through this document, some things to ask yourself: do you have the best candidate available? And again, especially if you're in a larger district, you're not allowed to. They send you the candidates once they've been vetted. How would you want your child in this class? How would this person impact your school culture? How will this person impact your community? These are some of the big, theoretical questions that you have to ask yourself when you're trying to get a feel for who you want to recommend, not who you're going to hire, because you don't hire, but who you're going to recommend. And that's when we come to this one here. It's easy to hire in April, target who you want, utilize the internet, and not utilize the process your district has. But what I want you to have here is a good protocol, and that's where I'm going to stop on this one. Is every district does it district on hiring, and that's why I had you to interview your administrator in your building about hiring practices. Every district does this a little bit differently, but the main thing is have a consistent process. Whatever your district's process is, follow that process to the letter of the law. Don't make it up as you go, and that's why I said a minute ago, sometimes you get a feeling for a person, but you should have a process and you should be able to, when the superintendent asks you, as a principal, why'd you recommend this person? You should be able to tell them in concrete terms, not with, I just had a feeling or I thought they'd be better. No, you need to have, your district has a process, you need to follow it, and you need to have an individual process where you treat each applicant exactly the same so that the data that they generate is comparable. And to that end, you need to make sure that you ask your district, do you have a specific set of questions that you ask, that I should ask all the candidates? Let me close this one out. Let me open this one up here. And generally, here's a list of 154 questions, but these generally, your district has a list of these questions that you're to ask, and these are the safe questions that have been vetted, and you won't ask something inappropriate like how old are you or where do you go to church. Those are inappropriate questions for a job interview. These are the kinds of questions, and what you should do is if your district has a set list then you should use that in interviews. If your district has a big master list like this, you should go through and pick out the ones that you think are important, no more than probably about 10 of these. But you should ask all the candidates the same questions. Now, that's one of the things that I know it sounds pretty simplistic, but that's one of the things that I find, you know, that I always found interviewing is that I had to remind myself, and I had to be disciplined to do that. Stick to the questions. Don't go picking daisies. Go wandering around and asking all kind of ancillary things. Stick to the questions, and that will help you avoid inappropriate questions that you may not even realize at the time, or you don't even think. I did ask a man one time if he wore a chicken suit, which probably wasn't the right thing, but I actually did ask him that. But that was after the formal interview was over, and he told me what a big Charlotte Checkers fan he was. And he was a fanatic, whatever they used to call them when they were out at the old Coliseum. And I said, you're not one of that group that wears the chicken suits, are you? And that was a legitimate question. And if he'd have said yes, I probably wouldn't have hired him, because those people were pretty crazy. There was a group of fans that used to go to the old minor league hockey games just back a long time ago in Charlotte. They dressed up in chicken suits. They were on TV all the time, and they were quite a sensation in town for the time. But you definitely didn't want to hire one of those people to teach in your building. Especially when you were the actual middle school, or junior high school that was next door to the Coliseum. I was at Eastway, and the Coliseum was less than a mile away, and so you didn't want one of your teachers over there dressed up in a chicken suit. I guess something like that wouldn't be something that you would bring up on your own. But when he said that he was a fanatic, one of the group that was regular supporters of that sports team, I asked him, and that was kind of for my own protection. And so there may be some spinoff questions for these things, but even be careful with those. I don't know if it was appropriate. I've talked to legal scholars, and the general consensus was, since he brought it up, I was free to ask the question. That's the way I felt at the time. But I wouldn't just walk in and ask somebody kind of out of the blue, do you wear a chicken suit? But it was an appropriate question for somebody who, in his leisure time was a fanatic of this hockey team. So, but that's the kind of thing that might be important. That wouldn't have been a good thing in our community, to have somebody that acted, that was one of the foolish people, adults that dressed up in chicken suits. That wasn't the image that we were trying to portray at our junior high school. So come up with a specific set of questions, the ones that you like. If either if your district has a set 10 questions, or if they have like 20 or 30 or 40 that they let you pick from, make sure that you ask all the candidates the same ones, and get through all of them before you do any ancillary questions on the side, like do you wear a chicken suit? Make sure that that's ancillary questions that come later. All right, so that's what you should do when you're interviewing. All right. Let me close that one. If you're not familiar with it, this is the North Carolina Principal and Assistant Principal Evaluation process. Now, what you need to know is what you need to understand is that you will be using this you will have this evaluation tool used on you when you're an assistant principal, and then you will be using this when you are an principal to evaluate your assistant principal, and you will have it used on you when you are the principal. You should spend some time with this manual. You can Google it, you can pull this one up, you can look at it. But what you're going to see is it pretty much mirrors the evidence artifact process that Gardner Webb has, that you are going through right now. And that's the way you'll be evaluated when you become principal. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I know you're intimately aware of the evidence artifact process, where you have to do a written narrative where you tell what you did, and you have to have artifacts to support that. That's kind of the way that works. That's the way your evaluation system works as well. So you need to get involved with this handbook. All right. Let's see what else I've got here. Okay. Let's see what I'm looking for, and I may have closed it. No, here's one right here. We've already looked at that one. I think I closed it, but that's okay. All right. I'll just open it back up. Right now in North Carolina, the majority of the weight of a teacher's evaluation. We're going to talk about teacher evaluation for a minute. The majority of it is from Standard 6. The majority of it is on the weight of the evaluation is on the actual formal observation process, whether you call it McGrill or power source or whatever the current terminology that your district uses for teacher evaluation, where the principal comes in and observes, the assistant principal comes in and observes. That's the bulk of the weight, about 80% of your evaluation. And the other 20% is your EVOS scores. As a teacher, do 85% of your students make a year's growth or not? And then as a school, you're evaluated as a principal, about 20% of your evaluation is does 85% of your teachers, do 85% of your teachers make growth? So it's all based on 85. Teachers, 85% of their students have to make growth. Principals, 85% of their teachers had to have 85% of their students make growth. So that's the way it works now. Let me do a resume share here. And let me go share to the desktop. There we go. All right. And that's from Standard 6, the executive standards. So what eventually is going to happen is it's going to be 50-50. Eventually, 50% of the teacher's evaluation is going to be based on whether 85% of her students make growth. And then eventually 50% of the principal's evaluation is going to be based on whether 85% of his teachers made growth with 85% of their students. So right now it's about 20, EVOS is about 20% of the evaluation. It's going to become 50. I think 37 states are already there. We're kind of lagging behind on that one as well. But eventually EVOS is going to be even bigger than it is now. Again, you know how that works. Each child individually has a score that they would have to make, a raw score on a test that they have to make that would show a year's growth. Now, what I want to spend a few minutes with you on is how is that raw score derived? And so I have an EVOS lesson plan that I use in 602. I don't know if anybody showed you this last semester or not. When there we go. Yeah, all right. So I've already covered the first couple of bullets on this. And so what happened is when the state of North Carolina got 20 years of testing data, they dumped it all into a big computer vat, a big database, and they had SAS, a private company outside of Raleigh there in the Research Triangle, do an analysis of variance. And what analysis of variance will tell you is what dependent variables have an affect or a amount of variability on an independent variable. Quickly said, what demographic factors of a child, like parents and race and income and those kind of things, how much impact do they have on his test score, which is the independent variable? And it's just forms a regression equation. Now, SAS does not release their formula; it's proprietary, but I can kind of tell you what the 10 variables are. And what their weighting is. Now, this has not got anything to do with my, with with uh, uh, this has got nothing to. This is just what the data tells us. There's no social commentary going on here. Test scores are affected by race, mother's education, father's income, teacher, the school district, the school, the grade the child's in, the age, the gender, and previous test scores. Those are the things, and those percentage, that's percent of variance that can be attributed to that dependent demographic variable that can in that. Now, as you can see, the only one that can be manipulated is the teacher. The teacher's worth 10%, and that's the 10% we work on to try to get teachers to use best practices. And so of the things that we can control, the teacher is the one thing that has the most impact of the things that we can control. So, and in the end, when I hear people say, well, I want all the high scoring, all of those things are controlled for in the regression equation. So in theory and in application and in practice, it might be harder to teach some kids than others, but they don't have to score as high as others. The growth score for each child is individualized. And in the growth model, doesn't matter about the group. It's just about that kid and what his particular score is. And so this is an actual one. So I've done let's see. All right, this is an actual one from CMS. I didn't use his last name but Jamar's a third grade student in CMS. His dependent variables are he's black, so he gets 20 out of 30 points. White would be 30 out of 30. Hispanic would be 15 out of 30. Now, you say, but Dale, that's pretty harsh and pretty right. No, that's just the way that the demographics break down. His mother had less than a high school diploma. 5 out of 15. If she'd have had no education at all, it'd have been 0. If she'd had a beyond a 4-year degree, he'd have got 15 points. No father in home, so father's income was, if it had been in excess of 150,000, it'd been 15. Teacher, we always consider the teacher to be great, so that's 10. CMS is a high wealth district, a low wealth, so they got all 5 points. Billingsville was a takeover school, so he got 0. A high growth school would have been 5 points. He was grade appropriate in terms of he wasn't a repeater, but however, he was developmentally delayed, and so he was a year older than his peers. So he got 3 points rather than the standard 5 points. The gender, he got 5 points because this was a math test, and boys do better on math and girls do better on reading. If previous scores, he wasn't on grade level, so that's a 2. So his equation looked like this. We add all those things together and we come up with 55%. And the possible raw score for that third grade math test was 180 times 55%. So Jamar's got to score 99 or better on the test, raw score wise. He's just got to score 99 out of 180 to be on grade level. So you can see these EVOS is customized. I know that y'all spend time going over those little dots and the colors and charts and all that, but the main question that teachers have is who came up with that score that this child has to make to show a year's growth? Well, SAS did, based on 20 some odd years of data now. This is exactly how they calculate what that child has to score to be on grade level. It's just pretty simple. So this will become bigger and bigger as we move through growth model accountability. We'll do less and less with comparative group accountability, comparing one year's group to last year's group or to somebody else's group. This is the truest form of accountability, but it compares the kid to himself and what his potential is. It's the fairest way for the child and the fairest way for the actual staff member and the school and the principal that are going to be held accountable. Now, I don't like that word fair. I told you that. That's really a middle school concept. Fair is a place for an adult to go in the fall of the year, get a corn dog and ride the Ferris wheel. But it's the most. I don't like the word equitable either. You know, when you start getting into equity, then you start getting into resources and those kinds of things. And so I don't like that. Get into that phraseology either. So I'll just say it's the fairest way that I know. The most fair, the fairest that I have seen so far is to do it this way. And so this is how that child's raw scores get come up with for EVOS. And again, that's going to be a big part and play a bigger part in teacher and principal. Your evaluation is how well your teachers do in terms of 85% of them getting their kids on grade level every year, their kids scoring on grade level. To recap, make sure that you don't ask any inappropriate questions interviewing. Find the best person you can. Sometimes it is best to have a sub if you can have one. If a good person hasn't come along, you may be in a situation like I worked in 4 districts during my career. 2 of them, we had a lot more leeway. Others, they sent us 3 candidates and we had to pick one, period. There was no such thing as you can wait till somebody better comes along. This is the 3 people that our analysts sent. You pick one of the 3. It may be that way, but you still need to ask them the questions. Don't ask any questions off script unless it's something important like the chicken soup question that after the 10 original questions were asked, when I asked him what he did for a hobby or, how he spent his leisure time, I thought that was an appropriate question for a follow-up like that. Now that social media is so big, especially, those kinds of questions are things that you probably need to follow up with. Somebody might have a hobby that's inappropriate, might be doing things and it gets on social media, and then that comes back and backlashes on you. It's bad enough when you have employees who do that. It's double bad when you hired that employee who do those things that are inappropriate. And nothing escapes social media anymore. I certainly wouldn't want to be the person who hired a teacher who, went out to a public sporting event and acted crazy and dressed up in a chicken suit. I certainly wouldn't want to do that. That wouldn't be the image that I would want for my school, and it wasn't. It shouldn't be the image that you want either. Yes, we can have fun and do some fun things at school, but something like that calls into question our professionalism in the community. You don't want to do something like that. So you need to gather all the data that you can on potential hires. I believe that I'm trying to stay within a time limit here tonight. I know that just watching these things cold is kind of hard to do. Finish up your OMA, get started on task 1 of the skip. Make sure you understand that task 1 of the skip does need a Zoom peer review. If you're having trouble with your groups, your Zoom groups, just let me know. I will be back with you next Wednesday live. And so I hope that you all have a good week. Again, apologize for not being able to be with you live, but I've got a personal problem. Not a problem. I've got a conflict in my schedule I've got to take care of tonight. And I'll see you next week, y'all. Have a good week. I'll see you then.